We can describe it now in diverse and many ways. The great tyranny that we have apparently chosen, that we have allowed ourselves. The Declaration of Independence says that the government that we see over ourselves is the one basically that we have consented to. Is the government that you see over you now the one you have consented to? And what about the government in here? Is there justice happening in here? That's a question that only you can answer for yourself, which is also the only place that true authority can arise from.
What does one do in their darkest moment? Do you know what it's like when the hurt, the hate, the abandonment, the rejection, the isolation is right on the surface? Do you know what that's like?
For many years now, thousands of hours I've devoted to meditation and prayer. But there are still times when my emotion and thought life seems to be out of my control. And it is in those times when I have to rededicate myself to the waiting and a great patience. Do you see that young man right there? There's a reason I keep showing you these images of myself in uniforms. That young man had a true vision for service, and he was deeply disappointed in the realization of that vision.
You know what I discovered once I was in the club? A bunch of hurting men just like myself. Men who were ussing and theming all over the place. Men who were small and insecure and hurt inside. That's who I met while I was wearing this uniform, and I uncovered that in me to a greater degree. Showing you these uniforms and talking about my experience like this is one way that I can express the betrayal that I feel. Don't get me wrong, I'm aware that I have lived a privileged life. When I think of the span of humanity and also the fact that the cobalt in this cell phone I'm speaking into was possibly mined by a child in destitute conditions, children dying in cobalt mines in the Congo. Do you know why I talk about the desperation of the human condition so consistently? Well, one reason is that when I look outside of me, that's what it appears to be like. I'm seeing a whole bunch of fearful, desperate people, oftentimes who are unconsciously so. And also, I'm talking about the desperation of the human condition because I'm full on feeling that desperation in my life every day. And so I try to talk about the bigger picture and try to bring some kind of perspective and context to the bigger picture because I've been suffering so deeply.
I've worn the uniforms. I've gained your college degrees. I've put myself in service. I've been to your therapist. I've surrendered myself to the healing institutions. And I even worked in the healing institutions as a healer. Here is one way I have discovered to describe the suffering of the human condition. The only true sin in our culture is to be unable to monetize oneself for one's true worth, or to be unwilling or incapable of trading one's time for a wage, becoming a slave paid wage earner. This message was communicated to me quite clearly when someone that I loved very deeply and very dearly told me that unless I could get back to work, I needed to get the fuck on down the road. Can you sense the betrayal in that? Why am I telling you all of this? Because I truly believe that together we can discover our common work, our common stories, and our common love, that we can strengthen one another, and that when we strengthen one another, we strengthen all the tribes to which we are connected. And I believe that depth tribes feed the world. The uniforms that I showed you, They represent my willingness to participate in the status quo.
Psychology has now come to understand that there are no individual mental health struggles, or at least not in as much as we thought. We now understand that every individual manifestation of a mental health problem represents the deeper problem of our culture.
We live down here in the foothills, where the paths are all riddled with holes, and the king up there on the mountain will be appeased by nothing less than our souls. Yeah, he wants nothing less than our souls. And so we offer our labor at the cost of our own worth. I don't mean to be rattling sabers, but I had my second birth. Yeah, I had my second birth. You know, Henry David Thoreau saw a government that was tyrannical and warmongering, and he said, "No, I will not support this." Civil Disobedience was the essay that he wrote. That essay apparently got in the hands of one we call Mahatma Gandhi, the great soul, that one in India who aligned his gifting and privilege behind the voice of the people. And he was willing to take a beating, willing to risk death at many turns. There were also those of us who rose up in the United States before I was born in the 60s, 50s, and before. Those who were rising up for generations, who decided, yes, I will sit in this seat on the bus. Yes, I will sit at this drugstore counter. And we are all coming to this place again as we realize the great tyranny that we have somehow agreed to.
Labor and the expression of worth.